Hello everyone and welcome to another Deercast discussion. This time we are discussing, in case you can't already tell, fallow antlers and their growth stages. So we've got, 3-4 different sort of age categories here, and I think we're going to quickly go through them, tell you a little about each one.
Yeah, so these are all antlers that Tom has recovered from either deery shot or casts that he's found in the woods, which is actually quite rare. I never seem to stumble across any because they just look like sticks to me. But we've got some lovely examples here.
Actually, the dog that found these ones. So I, similar to you, never find them, but she was sniffing around a pile of leaves and was absolutely fascinated by something. So I went over because she wouldn't come back, and she'd found these.
Very handy.
So there you go. Disobedient dog actually paid off.
Well, that's very handy. They're lovely. So we've got a bit of a spread of fallow antlers. Some of them are cast, some of them are not. Starting from your sort of right hand side, we've got your sort of 2-year-old pricket, and there's a bit of sort of discrepancy even when these ones. You can sort of see that's pretty poor. Whether that was because it was a young animal or if it was just a very, very poor specimen, it's hard to tell without the sort of body and the rest of the head. But there's quite a lot of discrepancy in that.
I should say, sorry to cut you, all those 3 prickets all shot on the same farm in the same year.
Oh really?
So,
Oh, interesting.
So quite sort of interesting that even within kind of not much kind of regional difference, you can get that sort of difference between some of the animals.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot with like a really big coronet and then a tiny little actual antler sort of poking out of it. There's all sorts of different. And some of them are really long and thin, and there's just sort of genetic difference, isn't it? But broadly, that's the sort of 2-year-old fallow, male fallow deer. Moving on, we come to the sort of soar/sorrel age. So these are your sort of 3 to 4-year-old fallow bucks. So you can see they've got the sort of brow tine and they've got a little bit of palmation. I mean, the deer around us aren't or the fallow deer at least around us aren't particularly well bred, and so we don't actually often get very much palmation. So there are so many regional differences, but typically you have the 2 tines and then a bit of palmation. But they're fairly easy to tell. But it's sort of the difference between a sort of a 3 and a 4-year-old is often quite difficult to tell depending on where you are and sort of geographic differences.
And probably fair to say where we are, any sort of bucks you see tend more likely to be in that age group than anything much older. It's quite rare that certainly I see anything that's kind of made it to this sort of stage.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd say that's fair.
Yeah, well, obviously the season for male fallow deer is a lot longer and more ethical to shoot them, at different times of the year, so they tend to get hit harder. They don't tend to really live much beyond being a pricket, I wouldn't say. Sort of 2 or 3 years old. And from my perspective, if I was going to shoot a fallow deer, I'd probably shoot it at about 3 years old, 2 years old for the sort of meats. I think a lot of people probably think the same. So I don't often see things like this.
No. So this is a fallow buck. So probably say these are cast antlers. So didn't actually see the animal though. I think Harry thinks he potentially shot it a year or so later. I think possibly. Very similar to the kind of soar and sorrels. You've got a coronet at the bottom, brow tine, tray tine, and then some palmation here and some spellers on the top here. This one you can see the kind of classic, and a lot of fallow bucks tend to get this, is what's called sort of fishtailing. So if he was a really good buck, this bit up here or this dip wouldn't actually exist, and you'd have solid antler across there. And actually you can sort of see similar has happened on the other side in a slightly different way, although I'd say there's more palmation on that side. Typically you kind of have a 6 or 7 year animal in order to sort of achieve antlers like this. And much like all the other deer as well, they cast them, and you can tell if they've been cast or not. They sort of, the way they fall off the animal there, there's a sort of, they end up with a dimple on their head, and you get that slight sort of bulge on the bottom of the on the antler there where it's been cast. And then this time of year, so sort of August, sort of June, July, August, these would be covered in velvet, and then they rub that off to reveal these beauties underneath. So really nice nice find actually, to be honest. And like I said, if that was a slightly better animal, you wouldn't have had this fishtailing in here as well.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also another thing, a nice thing about cast antlers is that obviously when they're right at the end of a sort of antler cycle, they've got a really nice colour to them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you shoot something a bit earlier in the season, perhaps they haven't been rubbing them against.
Like if you compare those two, isn't it?
Exactly. So I imagine that was shot later in the season to this.
Yeah.
And obviously you can tell that by the sap and the mud and all sorts of things that the deer would fray on and rub all of that, and the antler soaks a lot of that up. Whereas obviously an animal that hasn't had a chance to do that would be a lot lighter. And actually, if we do a bit of park culling and things like that, and shoot red stags, which obviously are an antler, and their antlers are pretty white.
Yeah.
Very little colour to them at all.
Especially once you get the kind of the superficial mud off them, actually then they're almost sort of go back to very much that sort of colour in there. You don't really tend to get them where they've got a really good thick dark colour on it like these.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because obviously they haven't got, or in the place that we go, they haven't got any trees or any mud really to rub them up against. So yeah. But I hope that was interesting. Do write us sort of comments if there's anything you want us to discuss. Send us an Instagram, send us an email, etc. Like, comment, subscribe, and tune in for the next one.
Yeah.